We're in this section we call the various things the Hall of Fame of Faith. It's these Old Testament characters that illustrate what kind of faith pleases God. And so we look at three sections that you have to have faith that believes that He is and that He is a what? Reward. And that's very important because that kind of faith seeks a reward, and that's why they diligently seek God, because they see that there's something for them out there. And so when we look at that, these people in this section, we're looking at all these people that illustrate this kind of faith. Now, when we look at this, actually that's from verse 7 through 30. I don't know why it says 26. Someone changed my slide. Probably it was Sam. I don't know. But was Sam in here? Oh, yeah, he's here. Now, when we talk about faith, faith is a mental exercise to start with, right? Because it's when you look at the evidence and you're convicted that something is true. But then we've talked about this a lot, that it has to move and move your heart. Like, I'm going to passionately give my life over to God because I trust Him. So it's this entire submission to Him because you trust. And so this word trust is so important. And really, every person we see here in this chapter, they've moved past just mental consent, but you see them trusting when it makes no sense. And how do you know they trusted? Because you all see them what? Acting. There's some type of action or work. And so by faith, Noah built an ark when he was warned about things he's never seen before. And see, it makes spiritual sense even though it doesn't make physical sense. By faith, Abraham went to a land and he didn't what? Didn't know where he was going. All right? So we see this constant theme that they're trusting God so much that they would do whatever He says because they believe He's faithful. And that's why I like Sarah. And we're going to actually go to verse 13 as a summation. But look at verse, I think it's 12. Is that where Sarah is? 11, thank you. Let me turn over there so you can read it, because the language is very important. By faith, even Sarah received ability to conceive even beyond the proper time, since she considered, and we talked about that word considered, she reasoned in her mind that God is what? Faithful. So she says, mentally, me having a baby makes zero sense. I'm too old. My husband's 100. This is not happening. But she's not thinking on that level. She's thinking on this level. No, God is what? Faithful. If He promises I'm going to have a kid, well, then I'm going to have one. Now, she laughed, and what did God say to her? And what did God say to Abraham? What question did He ask? Is anything too difficult for the Lord? Now, He's asking that question to make a point, but to get us to ponder. What is your estimation of God? Do you think He's limited? That His power has a ceiling, and beyond that, He can't do anything? So He asks the question, what's too difficult for me to do? Well, the answer, obviously, is nothing. But do you believe that? And when I say believe, it starts here, but have you given your life over to Him and said, no, He can do anything, and I trust that He will. That's why I'm looking for the reward, and so I'll do anything else. I surrender my life to Him, and you'll see it in your action. That's what we're going to see with these people. Yes?
But even with Abraham, that took a long time for him to get to that point to where
Yes.
that trust was there, because he kept falling off with Sarah doing different things, and God had to show him again and
That's
again,
right.
until finally he got to the point to where,
Yes.
okay, I understand, you are
So
God Almighty.
trust is built, and what David was saying is by walking with God and seeing that He's faithful. And keep trusting Him and keep trying Him, and you mess up and He still delivers you. And after a while you realize, I can trust Him. JC.
The way that various people, including myself on a day-to-day basis, enact that trust is interesting in that
Yeah.
But then
Right.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that we trust God will save us, and even if He doesn't,
That's right.
So there's all
Yeah.
these different manifestations of how people trusted and followed.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying, manifest. I'll say levels of it. They grow in that. Because she did try to work it out. Hey, sleep with my handmaiden. You know, that didn't work out because she got jealous. But you incrementally, and sometimes you take leaps where you trust more wholeheartedly. And Peter's a great example. Did he get out of the boat? Does that show trust?
Yes.
Does it make any sense you're going to walk on the water?
No.
But does it make all the sense in the world if Jesus says, come?
Yes.
So then why did he sink? Jesus said, you have little trust. He had little trust. He had some, but not enough. But that grew later after the resurrection, and they said, kill me, we don't care. They were like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah, so we grow in that. So that's where we are. All these died in faith without receiving the promise. Think reward, right? They were all looking for the reward, but they saw them. They saw them how? The spiritual eyes. They saw it as it already being real, even though it's from a big distance. And they confess, hey, we're just passing through this earth. We're strangers and aliens. We don't belong. And the more and more you feel like you don't fit in this world, maybe it's because you're being called home to heaven. You realize that is your home. And you get more and more uncomfortable here. And so they make it clear when they say these things, they're seeking a country of their own. So that's where we left off. And it's very powerful. And then we see that God's not ashamed of these kind of people because this kind of faith pleases God. He's not ashamed to be called their brethren. And this takes us to Abraham, which we just got to have to spend some time because to me, this is the most profound example of trusting God that I don't know if I could ever get there. You know, JC, you're talking about, manifestations or levels. Yeah. Well, let's look at it. And you know the story. So we're in verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he who can receive the promises, delivering up his only begotten son. And I understand there's really no sentence break in the original language. It just keeps flowing. It was to him who was said, in Isaac your descendants shall be called. And he considered that God is able to even raise men from the dead, from whom he received him back as a type. Now, when you look at Abraham in this example, here he says, when Abraham was tested. So we go all the way back to Abraham, and we have to understand the promise given to him. What was the three-part promise given to Abraham in Genesis 12? I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to make your name great. You're going to be the father of a multitude of nations. And then also the third part, through thy seed, all nations are going to be blessed. And that's who? Jesus. Your great-great-great-grandson is going to bless the world. Then he goes on, when he gets there, he said, I'm going to give you this great land, right? So Abraham has Isaac, Isaac has Jacob, and through that nation, out of his descendants were the Jews, and out of the Jews came the lineage of Abraham, Jesus, who now has saved anyone that has this kind of faith, right? The faith of Abraham, the father of faith. In fact, Galatians 3 says, if you believe like this, you're descendants of Abraham. So Abraham is the icon of faith. And the Jews held him as that as well. Some go so far to say he actually did kill his son and he was raised from the dead. They have all these traditions that aren't borne out in Scripture, but they point to this as a dramatic example of their great father, Abraham. And so Jesus, and in the the New Testament, when they referred to the Jewish fathers, your fathers, who were they always thinking of? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob. Because this promise was repeated to Isaac and it was repeated to Jacob. Now Abraham tried to work it out to have his own child with Ishmael, and he asked God in Genesis 17, may Ishmael live before thee. Now, what he meant by that, I'm old. This isn't working. I believe this great nation stuff. I don't understand thy seed. Through my seed, the whole world's going to be blessed, because that's called a what? A mystery. It was hidden from all. It was revealed in Christ, in the gospel. He says, I trust you, but can it be Ishmael that gets this thing going? That's really what he's asking. And what did God say? No. You're going to have a child this time next year. His name will be Isaac, and I will establish my covenant through Isaac. And he says, as for Ishmael, since you asked, I'll make a great nation out of him too. And he became the father of the Ishmaelites, the modern Arabs, with Islam faith. That's where he got the great name. He's a father of multitude of nations. Many nations, not just one. So we know it's not going to be Ishmael. It's all riding on what single person? Isaac. The miracle child. When you're past child rearing yourself and your wife's been barren. But yet I have a child. Now, 10, 12, 13, 14 years old. And God says, Abraham! Genesis 22. He said, here I am. He just responds, here I am. What do you want me to do? He says, go to a place that I'm going to show you and sacrifice your son as a burnt offering. Now, Hebrews says it's a what? A test. What's he testing?
His faith. His trust in God.
Is he testing this? He's testing this, isn't it? Does it make sense to kill your son? No, not emotional sense. But it also has a problem because in Isaac, your descendants will be. If Isaac dies, what great nation do we have? And that makes God a what? How about the great name? No. And the most important part, does Jesus come to save the whole world if Isaac dies? No. So all of God's plan fails. God's a liar and unfaithful because it all rests on Isaac. He already tried to get it started through Ishmael, and God said, no, it's Isaac. Now I got to kill the fulfillment to my promise. That's his dilemma. Not even speaking about the emotional terror and trauma of killing your own son. You see what's going on? Is this a test that surpasses any test? Yes.
Well, as they're mentioning, as you were mentioning, Abraham's built up. He's had the experience of seeing God be faithful with everything else.
Right.
Back to birth of his son.
Well, it's a process, and that's the way he passes. It's amazing, isn't it?
All these years, and so
Yeah.
as we read now here in Hebrews, God says do it. So Abraham's reasoning, going, well, he'll make it happen somehow.
Well, and that's where I want you to ask, where am I in my trust level like Abraham? So let's tell the story and we'll finish.
This is a culmination of all of Abraham's faith. It all came down, if you think about it, came down to this event. Because the rationale that he had to put in his mind,
Yeah.
God made me these promises, but yet he's asking me now to
Right,
sacrifice the one who it came through.
So let's look at this struggle. So he goes with the three men, his servants, and Isaac, and they bring the wood and the fire. And after 3 days, God shows them. And Abraham says to his servant, stay here. We're in Genesis 22, verse 5. We'll go and worship, me and the son, and then we'll come back. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean? We'll worship and we'll come back. You're supposed to kill him. Are you going to talk yourself out of it? Are you just lying to them and Isaac so they don't get scared because you're actually going to kill him? Now we know what he's thinking because it's in this verse, but it's a clue there. Like, what are you thinking? We will worship and we'll come back. Now 3 days it takes to get there, and what is he thinking in his head? I would have talked myself out of it. Or I would say, no, God's not going to make me go through it. No, he's never failed me. I laughed once, and God said, what? What's too hard for me to do? He must be serious. But if I kill him, he's a liar. But he gave me a son when it's really a miracle that he's alive. So if I kill him, the only thing God can do is what? Raise him from the dead. That's why he's saying, I'm going to go kill him, and then we'll both come back. Now, has he ever seen a resurrection?
No.
Not that we know of. Has God told him he'd raise him? No. Where did he come to that conclusion?
Nothing's too impossible for God.
Nothing's too impossible, Lord. But he reasoned in his own head. Like Sarah said, she considered that God was what? Faithful. God can't lie. And if he wants me to kill him, the only conclusion Abraham can come up with is God's got to raise him. That's the only way he can get out of this. All right, we get to see a resurrection today. Now, it doesn't take away the pain of hearing your son scream, because when he got there, he binds Isaac. Isaac had already asked, hey, Dad, we got the fire and the wood. Where's the lamb? And Abraham said, God will provide. And so the Jews refer this event, the binding of Isaac. That's what they call it, the binding of Isaac. And where God then substituted a lamb for his son. Because when the hand is coming down, the angel Lord appeared a second time and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he says, here I am, just like the first time. And God said there in Genesis 22, do not do this to your son, harm your child, because now I know that you fear me. Because if there's no action in the face of something that makes no sense mentally, then there's really no trust. God says, now I know. I want to see it. I don't want to just hear the talk. I want to see it. And that's why he's the icon of faith, because if we were asked to do something, we can't even give up TV. We can't even give up that which is bad for us. We can't even give up time to do something. We're not even talking about giving up our son. You know, and so do we fool ourselves? Sometimes, oh yeah, I got good faith. I trust a lot. I don't know if I do. I don't know if I do, right?
Nobody was just asking me, and it's a really good point. I thought about how much did this strengthen Isaac as a boy?
Or traumatize him for the rest of his life.
But then, as he understands and gets told what
Yeah.
happened, how much does that establish his faith?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Yes, Josiah, I'm sorry. He had his hand up. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, it was chosen to use Abraham here, and yet I feel like Jephthah from Judges doesn't get like an honorable mention.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of questions like, why did you leave this guy out and why did you mention him? Because Jacob's going to be in this list, and we got a lot of problems with Jacob, but we'll talk about him in a second. Can't answer it. It's God's Hall of Fame. We'll talk to him. Like David's just given a passing mention. David, is he a great man of faith? But he's just put in the list randomly with all the rest. I don't have time to talk about David. But he's going back to the forefathers, and Moses, and then just quickly through the rest. Yes?
I was just focusing on the fact that God took him to the very last
Second, yeah.
And he knows the mind of man. He knows what you're thinking. He knows where you're at. And he knew that Abraham would go through with it.
That's right.
And I think that's an important part that's missed out.
So, good point. And what's the wrong with this picture, by the way? I like artwork, you can tell me, but all of them have a problem.
The ram's already there.
Well, there's a ram that thick, and that's to depict that God had already prepared it, a substitute. But there's something else wrong with that picture. He's not tied up. He's just laying there, okay, Dad, kill me. No. He was screaming probably, right? So this is a very traumatic time. So we find then that faith dares to do that which is crazy. It dares to do the unthinkable because you trust God so implicitly that you give your whole life to him in submission. And you feel like you're out of control, but you know he's in control, so it's okay. And that's what's so beautiful about all this. Yes?
The interesting word, the word for testing, when I look it up and say, it could also be translated prove.
Right.
When
Right.
Where the same is. So
It's
trials-
you.
Trials allow us the opportunity to prove our faith.
That's right. That's right. It's used in 1 Peter 1, the same word. So there's the considered. What did Sarah consider? That God was. So is Abraham thinking too? And I just want you to see, faith is thought out. It goes from here to your action, your hand, and moves you when you start thinking about, who is my God? Is anything too impossible? Will God promises come true to my life? Because God only rewards and is pleased with those that believe that he is, and he's a rewarder if you seek him, you trust him enough that you're going to get a reward. And so there's got to be some contemplation in your head, like, what is important to me in my life? What am I grabbing for and letting go of? Because when you grab something, you have a opportunity loss. You can't grab everything at once. You sacrifice something else. And God's saying, sacrifice all this and look for that other country. Isn't that what they were doing? They're looking for a heavenly city. Now we'll get to Moses. He's a great example of that. He had everything, and he said, nope, I want that. It's better. All right, so it's really tough. He thought God was able to raise him from the dead, which he received him back as a type. There's some question of this type and antitype. Is this a picture of Jesus? Let me just say this. Did God substitute something for his son? Let me ask the question. Did God provide a substitute for Abraham's son Isaac? A ram. All right? And so in that effect, his son came back to life because he didn't have to die, as a metaphor. God provided a substitute for you and me so you don't have to die. His only begotten. And did he stop himself from doing it?
No, he went through with it.
He allowed it to happen. All right. So there's shadows of Isaac when you look at Jesus on the cross. There's illusions, but you can't miss it. It's God's only begotten.
God didn't ask Abraham to do what he wasn't willing to do himself.
Exactly. I don't know if you heard that, but God did himself what he was asking Abraham to do. That's right. And if we're not moved by that, this is thousands of years before Jesus, and you couldn't write this if you're trying to write a fiction novel. You couldn't dream it up. All right, so the word consider, it means to compute. It actually means he's calculated. He added things up. I love that kind of thing. He says, God promised, he's done this, anything's possible for him, he can't lie. I didn't think I'd have a son. We laughed. I still have a son. So when he added it all up, what did he conclude? Oh, God's going to raise him from the dead. That's crazy, isn't it? But when you think spiritually and you put God in his proper place, that's what you do in your life. You start adding things up. Like, no, I don't have anything to worry about. No, it's going to work out. Things are going to be okay because God's in charge if I just submit entirely to his will. Do what he says, even though it doesn't make sense. Any question about Abraham? Because the rest we got to move through quickly. So, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau, even regarding things to come. Now, there's a problem with this one because Isaac is blind, and who did he bless? The wrong child. Because his mother set him up by saying, Jacob, quick, put on Esau's hairy clothes, make the porridge stew, go in there, and your dad will bless you instead. He does exactly that. And then when Esau comes in, it says in the text that Abraham's really troubled by this, as well as Esau, but it's irrevocable because he had blessed him. Now, who is in charge of that ultimately? God was. And so it's interesting. He blessed him regarding things to come. He says, to Jacob there, I'll bless, those that bless thee will be blessed. He repeats part of the promises given to Abraham. Then later in Genesis 26, God appears to Jacob and actually repeats the promise explicitly to Jacob that you'll have a great nation come from you, and through your seed, Jesus will come. Now, Jacob had his problems, didn't he? He goes from a place to deceit to a moment of decision, and then really a place of, what's the other D word I was thinking of? The decision was he's running from his brother. He wrestles with an angel. Remember what happened there? He wrestled with an angel, and he didn't release him until he promised to bless him. And he touched his thigh, and he had a permanent limp. But his name was changed to Israel because Israel means what? Someone what?
Wrestled.
That contended or wrestled with God. He wrestled with God. Not just physically, but when he was in Israel before, he's running to Haran. He said, Lord, if you bring me back here, you'll be my God forever. What's he asking God to do? If you are with me all the way up to Haran, and if you bless me and take care of me, bring me back to my homeland down here, I'll know you're faithful. And I'll trust you and give you my whole life. He goes back there. We know at Haran how that happened. He gets married. Laban deceives him. All the deceit that Jacob promoted fell upon him, didn't it? And yet he came out of there with huge livestock, 2 wives, 12 kids. Comes back, but who's he got to face? Esau. But God reconciles the two, and he comes back to the place where it wasn't at Bethel. Where was it? And he goes back there and makes an altar, and he says, God, you are now the God of Israel. Me, you're my God. And he served him forever. And so he went from, deceiving to decision to this dedication to God. And so it says, next, Jacob, as he was dying. See the theme here? Abraham was going to kill, but now we're looking at 3 people at their death. What are they doing? Isaac is blessing Jacob rather than Esau at his death. Now, Jacob, whose name is changed to Israel, when he's dying, he has 2 sons of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim. And who is the older? Ephraim. And he switches the hands and blesses the younger. And Joseph's upset and tried to switch it back. He says, no. And then, so the blessings came through the younger. And here it says, he worshiped leaning on top of his staff. That staff because he's always got this limp. It's interesting, he was limping on his thigh just as he crossed. He blessed them because he believed that God was going to bring this promise to them. When Joseph then was dying, he made mention of the Exodus. So we go fast forward the story. Joseph was Israel's favorite son, right? But just as Jacob or Israel lied to his parents, his sons lied to him about Joseph. They brought back the coat of many colors. Said, looks like Dad, a wild animal killed him. And he wept. But they actually sold him into slavery to make a few bucks. And then fast forward, they learned that he's alive. And I don't imagine if there's anger, how they were dealt with that with the kids. But Joseph moves all the way to Egypt during that famine. Israel does, and that's where they live. But before he dies, he gives them orders because he's planning. He says, I don't want to be stuck here and buried here. So his order was, and I think I have it right up here. Why isn't this working? He made the sons of Israel swear, saying, you shall surely take care of you. God will take care of you, and you'll carry my bones up from here. So when you leave, how does he know they're going to leave? God told him, I'll make you a great nation, and you're going to have this great land back in Israel and Canaan. Now, did he see any of it? No, but he was so confident they were going there, he made them swear with an oath, take my bones back there and bury me back in Canaan. That's faith, isn't it? And that's exactly what they did. And so we go through there, and then now we're to Moses. And Moses is right up there with Abraham. In fact, Moses is the great lawgiver, the great deliverer himself. When he was born, by faith, he was hidden for 3 months by his parents. Now, are they named or unnamed? This would be great bonus points for a trivia question. They were named. It was Amram and Jochebed. But they're called out by God when the king had made an edict, Pharaoh, that every child under 2 is to be killed. It says when he was born, because he was so beautiful, and the word there, beautiful, really, he was just, you think your babies are cute. And I'm sure that, Amy, you think he's cute. And I know,
No, that's Lisa.
I mean Lisa, sorry. I said Amy, excuse me. And I know that Jordan will argue his is cuter, and then Nathan will argue his is cuter. This was the most beautiful baby around. That's what the word describes. Just beautiful. They just couldn't kill it. So by faith, they what? Made a little basket after they raised it as long as they could, and just stuck it in the Nile River and let it float away. Now, does that make sense? No, you're just, that's suicide for the baby. No. No, they had confidence and trust in God. And what's ironic, no, who's down there bathing or gathering water at the Nile River? Pharaoh's daughter. What a beautiful baby. Is it by chance that baby was beautiful, or did God make it beautiful for this purpose? So this woman said, I don't care if it's Hebrew or not. We got to keep it. It's so beautiful. He said, well, it's Hebrew, probably because of the cloth, right? He said, well, let's go get a Hebrew mom so it can nurse it. And who did they get? The mother of Moses. Coincidence, right?
Miriam watching.
Huh?
Miriam watching and helping.
Yeah. It's God's in charge. They weren't afraid of the king's edict. They didn't care. And so that's how it worked. By faith, Moses. Now, all these people are introduced by how? By faith. By faith. And we're not thinking just mental, oh, I believe there's a God. No, I trust him implicitly with my life. By faith, Moses, when he grown up, refused, that means rejected and abandoned, to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment, that's punishment, with the people of God, because he knew he was a Hebrew. How did he know he was a Hebrew? Come on, this is easy. Who raised him? His Hebrew mom, and she passed on all the Hebrew faith. And when he grew up, he realized, no, I'm not Egyptian. But how is he living? He was living amongst the treasures of Egypt, the son of the Pharaoh. People would bow down to him. And was there pleasure, any pleasure he wanted? Woman, wine, song, power, anything. He had it because he was in Pharaoh's household. And he rejected it. He said it's passing. That word passing is used different places. I think it's right here. Oh, I don't have it there. It's passing. It's where is it used? Mine's drawing a blank. That's all right. Well, I think it actually is used here. It says we look for the things which are, we don't look at the things which are seen, but the things that are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal. That's this world, right? They're here for a little while, then they're gone. But the things which are not seen are eternal. And what's the theme of all these people? They're looking for something spiritual, right? A heavenly home. And this idea of considering, he considered the reproach of Christ. This is deliberate and careful judgment. And again, I emphasize this because what did Sarah do? Considered. What did Abraham do? He considered. What's Moses doing? He's thinking. And if your faith doesn't cause you to think, we need to go back and re-examine our faith. Who is my God? How great is he? What can he do in my life if I just submit? He put it all together and it added up. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. Because even if I get reproached, this reward is so much superior. What reward? What reward is he talking about? Huh? How does Moses know about a heavenly home? How did Abraham know? He said they were all looking for a heavenly home because God has somewhere revealed it to them. They had the same hope as you and I, but that hope was so real, it's as though they could see it, as though they were already there, so they're no longer bound here. They're just drawn that way. And so they're willing to leave anything. The passing pleasures of sin. And that's a great sermon. Sin is pleasurable for a moment. Most sin, right? But how long does the pleasure last? Then the consequences come. But that's a whole nother sermon. The word looking to the reward means to look away from all else at another object. It means to reject. You're like, no, I don't. That's good. You ever been drawn to something in the store? Or you gone to an auto auction? No, that's the one I want. That's what it is. He says, that's what I want. You can have the riches of Egypt. It pales compared. Isn't that a beautiful thought? And that's why we have to keep our eyes on Jesus. Chapter 12 is coming up, hopefully next week. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king. When did that happen? Huh? Why did he go to Midian? You're right. He stood up for his Jewish brother by killing an Egyptian. The king heard about it, now he's going to kill Moses. So what he had to do? He had to run. So 40 years in Pharaoh's courts, now 40 years as a herder, a goat herder, right? Yes?
And what I found interesting about that is because he goes to a land where Ishmael's people live.
Yeah.
He lives with Ishmael's people, and then he goes back and takes God's people.
Isn't that funny? Yeah,
So
there's...
God uses Abraham's attempt at fulfilling the promise.
Yeah, those cousins, right? Yeah. All right. As seeing him who is unseen. It's all about spiritual vision. By faith, he kept the Passover. So now he goes back. See, he leaves Egypt twice. Once for his own life. The second time to take all Israel out. He goes back and he has the 10 plagues. The 10th one is going to be the death of the firstborn. So God said, an angel or death's going to pass over. So you kill this lamb, take the blood and paint it over, be inside with your coats on, your sandals on, and your staff in your hand, because tomorrow you're leaving. Does that make any physical sense? You can paint blood over your doorstep. You're not going to get cancer. You're not going to get heart disease. You're just going to get deliverance from everything. Does that make any sense? What do you mean death's going to afflict every firstborn, even of every cattle? Does it make any sense? It makes all the sense in the world because what? God said so. Now, what have they already seen? Water turned to blood, flies, frogs, darkness, fire, locusts. Am I missing one? Boils. I said darkness over the land, right? After you've seen all that, hey, if you want me to paint blood, I'll be in that house because there's going to be death tonight. He knows it. So by faith, they kept the Passover. They painted that blood. And by faith, we get in Christ because his blood is painted on us and death what? Passes over us. You say, well, how do you know it's true? Trust. I mean, really? You have to ask? You don't know God if you have to ask. It's just a mental pursuit, and that's all. Yes?
He did that after his objections about not being worthy or having the right talents to do any of this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he said, I'm not the man. That he learns that God's going to work through him. Good point. All right, so by faith, the last one, he passed through the Red Sea. Would that be scary? I mean, really, we could spend another 10 minutes talking about that. It's an ocean of water, and the people go, uh-oh, we're dead, because here comes Pharaoh and his chariots. And he says, stand back, watch the deliverance of the Lord. He takes his staff, and water, dry land. And then he says, go. Dave, you go first. I mean, does this make any sense? That it'd be piled up and it'd be dry land. Would you want to go? They did. They got on the other side, and the Egyptians, when they attempted, they all drowned. Now, Jordan and I were talking, after all that God did, what did Israel do time after they got into the promised land? They turned to idols and idols. Like, what? After what God has displayed to you, why would you ever go to an idol? Do we do that today ourselves? Because we trust in things more than we trust in God. It's the same affliction we all have because we don't see the unseen as though he's real. He's the God of the Old Testament and he doesn't really care about us. No, you got to believe he's a rewarder. If you what? Seek him. Give him your whole life. Just bow down and say, Lord, what do you want me to do?
All the people that saw that got up to Israel and Canaan and said, no, we're not going. And so he got
Yeah.
rid of them.
By faith, they finally get to the promised land, and we're skipping through history now, and the first city they hit is the wall, Jericho. It's a walled city. And talk about us, I don't want to say stupid. Okay, an idiotic military maneuver. It's to march around a city 7 times, once every day, and the 7th day, 7 times, and at the end of the 7th time, what do? Blow your horn. Yeah, what type of military campaign has been successful trying that?
The best military campaign in the world.
One. It makes no sense here, and I can imagine they were mocked from the walls. Hey, march a little faster, stomp a little louder. Yeah. But we know it happened. Because what? Trust. It's trust. By faith, Rahab the harlot did not perish, because she was on a house along the wall, and she welcomed the spies, and she asked, when you come, spare me. What did she have confidence was going to happen? We're going down. First of all, this city is going to be destroyed. So she asked for mercy, and God gave it to her. And she is in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. All right? So we go on. Now, what shall I say? I don't have enough time, the writer says, to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah. There's Jephthah. And David and Samuel and the prophets. I mean, he says we could spend the rest of the day talking about these guys. You know, Samson, did he show faith? Yeah. I think the moment was when he's blinded because of all of his mistakes and he just prayed to God one more time. Yeah. Did he get it?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. All right, there was vengeance given to him. Samuel and the prophets, he says, you know, these generals, they conquered kingdoms, they performed acts of righteousness, they obtained promises, shut the mouth of lions. That's Daniel and the lions, and you think of that. Quenched the power of fire, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Escaped the edge of the sword, through weakness were made strong, were mighty in war, put armies to flight. And he just goes on talking about women received back their dead by the resurrection. Who was that? Elijah and the widow, remember? Others were tortured, not accepting the release in order they might attain a better resurrection. Others experienced mockings and scourging. They were chained and imprisoned. And he just goes on. They all did it. Why? Because of trust in God. They acted. They were sawn in two. That was what? Jeremiah? Who was the one the prophet sawn in two? Isaiah. I'll go with that. This is being recorded. They were tempted. They were put to death with a sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, ill-treated. Men of whom the world is not worthy. Oh, we should camp on that. They were treated like the scum of the world. You know, all these things that happened to them, they're treated as the low life, and we're glad to get rid of them. And what's God's judgment and assessment of them? The rest of you are not worthy of these people. Because they find so much favor and honor in God's eyes because of their faith. We can be those kind of people. The world just doesn't understand who we are. And so he says, they all gained approval by their faith and didn't receive what was promised because it's still ahead. Because God has provided something better for us so that apart from us, they should not be made perfect. We're all going to get to heaven together. That's chapter 11, the Hall of Fame of Faith. All right, thank you.